During wildcard weekend, one AFC team came out looking better than they went in, right? Only one. And that was the Chiefs because they didn't play.
Yeah.
They're the only team that I think their fan base should 100% feel better today than they did on, Saturday morning, going into this wildcard week because the Bills, the Bengals, and the Jaguars. I'm getting in trouble for calling them the Jaguars. Apparently, my Midwest is showing, and it is
Jaguars.
upsetting some people. So the Jaguars, they all showed fatal flaws throughout their games during wildcard weekend, and the Chiefs didn't have to play, so therefore they didn't. We are well aware of what their flaws may be, but seeming we see those every single week or when they do show up, we know what they are. We don't get as many opportunities to see how the Bills might lose a game to a third string quarterback, how the Fraud Gulls should have lost a game to a backup quarterback in Tyler Huntley before they called the weird sneak, or how the Jaguars had to come down from 27 down to the Los Angeles Chargers because they were getting blown out. It's like seeing all these teams go through all of that, you have to feel a little bit better about the Chiefs' chances. They, at this point, had won enough games to deserve to be in contention, if not flat out win the 1 seed, and they're still that good. You can have questions about all these other teams after this first weekend of the playoffs. The Chiefs have no new questions. Like that's a win for them.
I can't wait for Maddie to be calling them the snow leopards by the end of the week. It's just slowly.
I got a list. Don't worry.
So, no, it is one of those that kind of simply by not playing, the Chiefs kind of got themselves in the driver's seat, and they obviously were with the 1 seed. But DraftKings agrees. The Chiefs currently have the best odds in the AFC of going and winning the Super Bowl. They have the best odds in the NFL of going and winning the Super Bowl. And so, like, simply by not playing and by coming out against the Raiders and basically putting on a performance, putting it out there and saying, hey guys, remember us? We're still good. Don't worry about it. We still got this. And knowing what Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo bring from a game planning perspective into the playoffs, yes, I do think that gives the Chiefs a little bit of a leg up. Now, certainly no, this Chiefs team lost to the Cincinnati Bengals. They lost to the Buffalo Bills in the regular season. That has happened, and I totally get that. You want to go back and look at those games and say, listen, those teams were better on that day. They absolutely were. They were a better team than the Chiefs on that day. Chiefs are a lot different now than they were then, having healthy playmakers again, adding guys like Kadarius Toney, adding a few new elements to the offense, adding a few new elements to the defense. That pass rush was kind of non-existent in both of those games by comparison. And so maybe you get to see that element come up. So in that regard, yes, I do think that the Chiefs are the favorites in the AFC. I think that they should be. And I think that while all these teams have holes, while all of them have fatal flaws, I think the Chiefs are easier to kind of brush over and cover up. And yes, a lot of that is Patrick Mahomes, but it's also some of that Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo, and their consistent playoff performances as well that you got to factor in.
I look at this team and I think, you just got done talking about the 2 losses, very tight football games against the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals. Mahomes had the ball against the Bills, with under 2 minutes and a chance to drive the field through an interception. Obviously, yeah, that sucked. Travis Kelce fumbles the ball. They still escape a road victory against the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, those games were not blowouts. They were 1 possession games. They were close football games. And the Chiefs weren't like too far out of reach of those football teams. And I look at, if take one of those games swings a different direction, which was in the range of outcomes, 100% in the range of outcomes, for both of those football games. We're looking at a 15-2 football team. We're not having debates about the 1 seed. I mean, the Chiefs have a really, really bad loss early in the season. But outside of that, like, they've taken care of business for the vast majority of the season. And it's not always been pretty. There's always been things for us to discuss and critique. But this team's won a lot of football games. They've played a lot of close football games, some closer than we expected. And I think this is something that you see with Andy Reid football teams. And it's kind of maddening and it's frustrating to watch from the outside. But some of the in-season, regular season management, yes, they're absolutely trying to win the football game every time that they roll out there. And Andy Reid's not trying to put games at risk in a sizable, significant way by maybe making some in-game decisions to trust his defense. He's trying to battle test a group, for the moments that they're about to experience. And let's start with the defense a little bit. It feels like there are some things since the Bengals game where this team is kind of on an upward trajectory. They're playing better football. The pass rush is getting home. They're turning the ball over a little bit more recently. Like, now, some of it has to do with the opponents that they're playing, but you have to be a little bit encouraged by what you've seen on the defensive side of the football so far, Maddie.
Well, Pete Carroll's done a lot of seminars and stuff over the years since he's started coaching the Seattle Seahawks about making sure they're peaking at the right time. So going back to when they were having their little miniature dynasty-esque run there, it was a lot of talk about how you don't want to peak in November or even at the beginning of December. That doesn't do you any good to play your best football then and then to stall out. And when you stall out in the NFL, that's called regression because somebody else is getting better. So if you peak at the end of November and then you stall out and you just play at that level the rest of the year, somebody else is getting better, therefore they're catching you. That makes you, get worse. That's the matter of fact. And so Andy Reid and the Chiefs, they've been very good at not peaking too early. They do a very good job of consistently building and building and building. And yeah, that makes some games maybe look a little bit uglier. And I don't mean that he's holding them back on purpose. It's just there's a specific time when you want to be playing your best football, and that is going into the playoffs. So you are playing your best football as the playoffs start. So if that means, and this is what I think the Chiefs really do, and I promise I'll get to specific defensive stuff soon, Kent. I swear. I know I'm breaking out of your outline. I understand.
No, you're fine. Go for it. Go off.
The plan is they're working on certain specific things each and every week that are going to build and build and build, and then they can circle back to it in the playoffs because they got practice at it. The goal isn't to go out there and blow out their first very upcoming opponent by 50 points. That's not goal A. The goal the first goal is 100. It's to be the best team they can be come January, come February, and be there and playing. And I think Andy Reid and this coaching staff very much take that to heart. They very much have that same philosophy. So when you go back and look through and starting with the Bengals game and moving forward, you can very clearly see, there's some close games in there, but the Chiefs were working on very specific things, getting very specific players involved in certain ways so that when they do have to use them come playoff time, when they have to dial back, fall back on these things, they're ready for it. And that's going to make them a better team. I mean, just blandly defensively, look at how much better they've tackled since that Bengals game. Look how much better they've tackled, how they've swarmed the ball, how they break down in space. It's the most simple thing, but here's something that not every team does well as the year goes on. And the Chiefs certainly weren't doing it great in the middle of the season. Now, all of a sudden, we're coming in here. When's the last time you found yourself screaming at the TV that they couldn't tackle multiple times in a game? A missed tackle here or there is fine, but we were never getting upset about the lack of tackling. And that just goes to say they're getting better and better each week, heading into the time where it really matters.
Yeah, that's and you've watched him kind of grow into some of those roles on the defensive side of the ball. And obviously that's what happens when you play so many rookies and you are rotating so many guys out. Hell, Jalen Watson wasn't a starter for this team 4 weeks ago. And now he's going to be the guy getting the lion's share of the snaps. They were still figuring things out. They were still figuring out what they did well. Trent McDuffie hadn't really played in the slot 4 weeks ago. Now it seems like that's a position where he's going to play a lot of the time in sub packages. They are constantly tweaking these things. And as you have seen here at the end of the year, the defense all of a sudden has started to come on a little bit more. They're more comfortable. You're seeing the safety play get better. That's not a coincidence. Those guys are playing better. Don't get me wrong. Juan Thornhill, Justin Reed are definitely playing better. But as the scheme has gotten nailed down and the personnel has gotten nailed down and they're really focused with a mind towards the playoffs, this is the result. Now, all of a sudden, they look better because the scheme is featuring some of the things that they do better. So do the rookie corners. So does the pass rush because now the secondary is giving them a little more time to get home on some of this. It just all kind of cascades through the entire thing. I think the only position group that I would argue does not look better on defense right now at the end of the year than it maybe did mid-season is the linebackers. And it's just a consistency thing. It's not that those guys are playing poorly. It's just maybe Willie Gay has a bad game. Maybe Nick Bolton has a bad game, but then the next game they rebound and they look better. It's just a consistency thing. Like that's something you get nailed down in the playoffs, you feel a lot better about. So from that regard, this Chiefs defense has been so much better consistently at the end of the season. I think it shows up when you look at like their statistics. This is the first year under Steve Spagnuolo that they have been ranked better in yards than they were in points. And part of that's because it's the first year that they weren't top 10 in points. They were 16th, very middle of the pack, but they're 11th in yards. They're coming up with more stops. They're coming up with more 3 and outs than they have in any previous year. And that has definitely ramped up as the year has gone along. And right now, they are tied for 7th in the NFL in yards per play. And that is season long. That this defense at the beginning of the year was giving up a lot of yards per play, and they have clawed it back. They are performing so much better. So yes, I think that that's one of those, like Maddie said, you build towards the playoffs, you build towards the end of the year. This defense is hitting on those cylinders right now.